So, I watched Jojo Part 6. Since my last reluctant journey through JoJo's, everything ended well. I got into JoJo's, forged new bonds with my friends, all well and dandy, right? Wrong. Those same friends left me.
Forget the guys. Forget the marathon. Watch Stardust Crusaders. You can binge it so much faster.
Yes, I did ditch them to catch up quicker, but
I did it for you. Don't you put that on us!
For example, when Part 5 came out and I mentioned watching it together, they just looked disgusted. One friend just packed up and moved away. So Part 5 ended up being something I had to watch on my own, and during it made me really realize that it wasn't the same. So by the time Part 6 came out, any motivation I had to continue on had plummeted. And that got me wondering, did I enjoy JoJo's because of the group watch, or is it because I actually enjoyed JoJo's? I had to know, and there was only one way to find out.
Welcome to Orlando. The local time is 4:13.
Months before this moment, a plan had started formulating. A plan to get my friends to watch JoJo's with me again. They thought we were there for vacation. What they didn't know was that we were there for immersion. I was on a mission to finish JoJo's Part 6 and to capture any strangeness we encountered along the way. All the pieces were now in place. All I had to do now was just wait for the right moment. It took a bit of convincing and putting Hunter x Hunter on to get them in the binging mood and incept the idea into their brains, but we finally cranked up Part 6, and as soon as we started the marathon, we were all really feeling the intro. So much so that we could never bring ourselves to hit skip, which is rare for us. Colorful, dynamic, it seemed to really give a feel for Jolene's vibe, and also just the return of epic 3D intros to signal that continuity from Part 3, with Jolene representing the next generation while making Parts 4 and 5 feel more akin to detours. As we got into the very first few episodes, Part 6 already felt different, and an obvious part of that was it being the first time we had the perspective of a female JoJo protagonist, which made it feel fresh. But I also felt like this part, more than other parts, was more bizarre, and I don't know if that's because being in Florida was amplifying it, or if the show being set in it was just letting JoJo itself run wild. Like, not knowing where Jotaro's hat ends and where it begins is par for the course, but so many other insane things were just going on, one after the other. Jolene's standability in itself was already a hint on how out there this season would be, especially in terms of the body horror. All of this just made the battles feel wild. For example, Hermes' standability, letting her duplicate body parts, amped up the strangeness, but also added a level of strategicness and versatility to make up for its lack of raw power. Overall, I liked Jolene, and the whole prison setup made me curious to see where they were going to go with it. The episodes just managed to fly by. The dynamics of Jolene's relationship with Jotaro was intriguing, especially just seeing Jotaro as a father. But what I'd say got me really invested is really Jolene's character and her point of view. She had the coolness of Jotaro, the excitability and expressiveness of Joseph, and just the overall heart of the Joestars embodied in her.
I never liked Jolene.
As for the supporting cast, FF and Hermes also added fun to that dynamic by bouncing off Jolene really well. I was entertained and was excited to see more, but when I turned to look at my friends, I think Disney just really tired us out. Alright, this is the third day of Disney. How you guys feeling?
I'm worried that my feet and legs will give out.
On the third day of Disney, my good friend said to me,
My biker has all my money.
Okay, this next batch of episodes were kind of a slog. Initially, it was fine, with getting to see Hermes avenge her sister by literally banishing Sports Max into the light, which actually managed to feel very cathartic. And even the double stand fight against Viviana Westwood, who's being powered up by Survivor, while still being able to use his own stand to bring down meteorites, was entertaining. But then we got two more stand fights after this that just slowed down the pacing considerably, and by extension, our investment in it. And all of this really wasn't helped by the fact that it was all still a mystery regarding uncovering what Pucci's intentions really were and what the significance of this bone was. Because instead of building up to revealing more about it, the mystery felt like it was on hold while all these fights had to play out, and it really made it lack any sense of real urgency. And that's finally when things started to pick up. Episode 22 was lit now that the pieces were finally coming together and moving beyond the prison, with Pucci finally being able to go full speed ahead with his plan. Unfortunately, the last 2 episodes put us back in the prison after all this progress, but it wasn't too bad, because on one level, while the last 2 episodes did feel like another obstacle just thrown in Jolene's way in order to keep her in the prison while Pucci got a head start, on another level, I got that it was necessary to both cement Jolene and even Emporio's resolve, since this was becoming about way more than their personal stakes in the matter. This was it. I was starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But unfortunately, I don't think that's what my friends were seeing. Oh shit, this was a mistake. Okay, maybe it was time we took a break. This is everything I want it to be. My reluctant journey back to Pandora. It was amazing. I don't know what I can do anymore. I don't know if I want to watch movies anymore. I feel like I just want to see Avatar again. We still had a good amount of episodes left, and we were running out of time on the trip. And now we had reached an impasse. They couldn't keep going. I failed. During the time I was watching part 5, there is something I started to realize about Araki. There is a certain boldness to him that I respect. While I don't feel strongly about part 5, I feel strongly about how he approaches the craft. While I love the character designs, the bright colors, and just the overall vibe of this part, you've got the 7-page Muda and the best bro, Bucciarati. But the second half was just not as strong, and even though I wanted to love it, I found the ending to be a bit disappointing. However, by this point, I had started to see the Jojo series itself as more of a character that Araki had successfully crafted. That even though one of the parts was not as satisfying, at its core, it was still Jojo. And I just found this to be brilliant, because he used all of that creative freedom to make something that was distinctly him, and could distinctly possess its own identity. However, for my friends, this was not the case, and this is what led me to this uphill battle that I was now facing in the present. And now we were nearing the end of the trip. There was like a day left before we went back, and in a last-ditch effort, I just decided to put on Jojo's in the living room and power through it alone. And surprisingly, I started to come alive during the Orlando episode. It was so surreal watching it in Orlando that I pretty much got euphoria. I was just cackling throughout the house. One of my friends that was passed onto the couch even came alive. He was loving it. Unfortunately, that was short-lived since it really only lasted an episode, but it was enough to get us back into it. And then slowly I noticed my other friends started returning.
We had nothing better to do.
This was it. We were now ready to embark on the final stretch. As we got introduced to Dio's sons, it definitely caught our interest because it felt like the story was now ready to tie everything back to its roots and make this conflict feel truly generational, especially since they had actual blood ties to Dio, unlike Pucci. Unfortunately, they were kind of gone a little too quick. Personally, it left me feeling like more could have been done with them, as they were brought in to emphasize this theme of destiny and gravitational pull Pucci kept on babbling about, so it would have been more meaningful if they played a more integral role in his plans from the beginning. Also, where was Giorno? However, I do have to say that the Underworld stand battle definitely felt like a really nice change of pace by being more than just another gory battle. It was a fight against time and predetermined fate. Basically, it was an escape room. This also helped add that sense of urgency that had been lacking so far, which led us directly into what I consider the wildest stretch of I can't explain what's going on, to the point that King Crimson started making sense to me. Nah, I'm just kidding. King Crimson still doesn't make sense. Amid rainbows, snails, and subliminal messaging, I witnessed one of my friend's brains malfunction in real time. He just checked out after that. Jojo has always been bizarre, but I think it would be fair to say that the series might have out-Jojo'd itself here. But then as we got to the part where Pucci's stand evolved into Sea Moon, all bets were off. There was this lingering feeling of despair and desperation pervading the fight throughout that it just managed to suck us right in. We were on the edge of our seats. It really felt like the endgame now. With body parts getting inverted, I couldn't see any way of countering the stand. That's why when Jolene came up with the Mobius strip, it felt a bit like bullshit, but once we heard the explanation, it was too hype for us to care. And then once Pucci shot at Jolene's head and... Oh shit. Time. We were all immediately strapped in, excited to see where this would go next. With the chaos of time accelerating at such an insane pace, everyone sticking so closely together to bring Pucci down, an amazing reference to my boy Kishibe Rohan still being able to finish his manga deadlines without being affected by this crazy time acceleration, Pucci even pulling an old Dio move with throwing knives back at Jolene before time stopped while giving Jotaro PTSD, everything was coming to a head and we did not know where it would land. We had reached the highest of the highest points. And then we reached the ending. There was silence in the room. I think everyone was just trying to process what had happened, what they expected versus how it actually unfolded. One friend broke the silence. All I could hear was,
That was a bad ending.
Another friend said he was done with JoJo's. He said the reset felt like it spat on everything that came before. And then someone else yelled,
Where was Giorno?
Who's Giorno? No, seriously, who's Giorno?
As for me, I honestly didn't know what to think. I felt like there was something more there that I just couldn't articulate at the moment. Because while group watches are fun, sometimes they can lead to a bit of groupthink, when you're kind of vibing off of everyone else's energies while trying to understand their perspectives. So this felt like one of those moments where I had to kind of probably take some time to rewatch this on my own. After thinking about it some more, I kind of came to my own realizations about how I felt about this part overall, and I realized that, for one, I was not as attached to the cast in this part like in previous parts. Some of the friendships didn't feel like they formed together organically. For example, I was just not buying the whole closeness some of the characters felt with Weather Report, especially when he died. There were also many fights and minor villains that were hard to get invested in, and quite a few things did feel undercooked. But one thing I do not think is that Jolene failed. Sure, it wasn't this hype ending where all the Joestars came together from past and present and vanquished evil, forever freeing their bloodline from Dio. It was something more symbolic, which was more fitting as the end of a long saga rather than just the ending to one more entry in the JoJo canon. The Joestars have always had the uncanny ability to move others to action, and that was started by Jonathan, who sacrificed himself so that others could live, inspiring his comrades in the process, like Speedwagon, who went on to guide his descendants. So why would it not be fitting that the last of this JoJo line, at least in this universe, resemble the one who started all of this, by sacrificing herself to empower a child who has never had any freedom to live out his own life outside of literal prison walls? The act of defying fate and giving this kid who was destined to live out his life in that prison a chance to not only keep living, but to be the one who put an end to that evil that put him there in the first place is the most Joestar thing any of them could have done. And while it's a shame they don't get to retain any of their memories, they get a better reward. They get to live their lives with a completely clean slate, untarnished by all of the painful things that they had to endure in their past and that their family had to endure. We came full circle in order to let them be freed from the cycle. Just like Dio needed someone to inherit his will in the form of Pucci, the Joestars needed the right person to inherit theirs. Emporio is left as the only person that needs to remember the legacy of the Joestars as he carries it forth into the new world, because it was never about them, but the people they inspired. And that, I think, is a great ending for an entire saga. Even though I don't love every JoJo part, I've come to love how Araki has built this series by just throwing whatever he wants onto the canvas and seeing what comes out on the other side. Sometimes it might make the series feel inconsistent, but it never makes it feel like it's doing the same old thing. He's always pushing it to evolve, and that's what makes it worth looking forward to see what he comes up with next, to see how he evolves as an artist. He's willing to risk having misses in order to have the time of his life while creating, and at the core of all of the JoJo parts that he creates, he's always imbuing his ideals. And getting to experience this bold way of approaching the craft is honestly what has made this reluctant journey worth it. I thought you moved because of JoJo's.
No, man. Of course not. I moved because I'm getting married soon.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Dude, that's awesome. Congrats, man. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, no, I
Cool. So now that we're all good, what did you think of part 6?
Part 6?
Yeah, Stone Ocean.
Oh, God. Honestly, I never thought I was going to hear from him again.